You're listening to the Happier Marriage Podcast, which is a podcast for hopeful spouses, and this is episode 17. This episode is entitled Proven Strategies for Deeper Connections and a Happier Marriage. This is part 4 of a 5-part course on happier marriage secrets. This episode will only be an excerpt of day 4's live recording. If at any point you would like to access the full course, you can do so by going to kingslegrant.com/HMS course. Now, in this episode, you'll discover the necessary ingredients for deeper connection with your spouse and your role in the process. Because this was done with an audience, you'll hear interactions with an audience member live. But don't worry, it's not much of that took place in this episode. Also, there are a couple spots where I might reference a slide, but you'll still be able to follow along as I explain each slide. Now, here's what I would like you to do at the end of this podcast. Make sure you listen to the past 3 episodes of the show, episodes 14, 15, and 16. Subscribe to the show so you don't miss any new episodes that are coming out. Leave a rating and a review, and bookmark this podcast as your top resource for insights on having a happier marriage. And stay tuned as we unpack this episode. I'm Kingsley Grant, a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified relationship coach, and an in-demand speaker who have been married for over 3 decades with 2 adult children. I'm also the founder and CEO of Helping Families Improve, a counseling center that caters to helping families experience the life God intended for them to have. So how do we have a happier marriage where love, respect, and deep connection takes place? That's what you'll find out as you listen to the Happier Marriage Podcast. What's up, ladies and gentlemen of Happier Marriage World? I hope you're ready for another round of the Happier Marriage Podcast for hopeful spouses. This episode might trigger you because it is going to require you to take responsibility for the role you play in creating a happier marriage and have deeper connection with your spouse. But that is one of the purpose of this show, to stir things up and then to take you in for a safe landing. So buckle up and here we go. We're talking about adjusting for deeper connection. Adjusting for deeper connection. That very word adjusting implies you and your spouse, all right? But here's what I find. Sometimes maybe you might be the one who are more motivated to adjust and the other person might not be. And sometimes I find when couples come or one spouse come to me and they'll say, you know, my husband, my wife is really just don't even want to be here. And I say to that spouse and encourage him or her this way. I say, listen, in an equation, if 1 + 1 = 2, right? 2 variables, 1 + 1, the 2 variables equals 2. If you change one variable in any way, shape, or form, your outcome is going to be different. So I said, all it takes is you changing, and if you stick and be consistent with your change and adjust, you're going to have eventually, right, something that you really want, right? And so don't be discouraged if you are making the adjustment and you find that your spouse is not yet ready or is not as motivated as you. Hang in there, because I believe that with patience and consistency, change will come. Now, again, I want to mention this is not therapy and should not take the place of professional help. And so you can, I want to always qualify that, because sometimes people may say, well, I'm getting therapy through this program, this presentation. No, it's not. It's me bringing the skill sets and the tools and the resources and my years of experiences is going to be very valuable, of course, but it should not take the place of professional therapy. Now, we have an agenda as we normally do, and here is the agenda we're going to get through in today's presentation. Recap of day number 3. We're going to talk about seeking to connect. What does that look like? Because that is ultimately what you want to do, and hopefully your spouse want to do as well. Seeking to connect or reconnect, right? We're going to talk about love currency exchange. How do you exchange the love currency? And we're also going to speak about facts over feelings. This is one of the most important part, I think, of many relationships, because sometimes we're describing feelings when it's a fact, or sometimes we're describing facts as a feelings, and it becomes confused. And so what you're trying to communicate doesn't get across. Facts over feelings, and then sacred exchange. Sacred exchange, because there's something sacred about communication that I want to make sure you get from today's presentation. And of course, then we talk about homework assignments, and then day number 5. So here we go. A quick recap of day number 3. Okay. We talked about recognizing healing wounds or healing needs, right? That we have to first take responsibilities. I mentioned here that through empathic communication, I gave you the definition of that, the ability to communicate your understanding of another while doing your best to share their feelings. And we're saying what that is going to allow you to do is learn how to request, offer, and accept healing, right? We dug deep into that in day number 3 and talked more about what does that look like? How do you request? What do you request? Why do you request it? What do you offer? Why do you offer it? What do you accept? And why do you accept it? And we did that in day number 3. And we talked about the fact that it requires some element of risk, because as long as there's a desire and there's a humility and vulnerability following that, then we are going to then take a risk, because when we're trying to offer and we're trying to request healing, we may not get what we are looking for, and we may feel disappointed. We may feel as if, why even bother is not working. And so we're saying it's a risk, yes, but risk must be taken. We talked about that in day number 3, and we shared about we've got to first accept responsibility, and we have to learn how to apologize well in a way that the person accepts apology or requests apology. And we have to also then request forgiveness, offer forgiveness, and accept forgiveness. We talked about that in day number 3. And towards the end of day number 3, I said to you, if you have to start designing, what do you want your future to look like? Because some couples don't have an idea of what their preferred future should look like in their marriage, right? And sometimes you may not even know what it should look like, because you don't have a model from which to look at and say, I don't even know what a preferred future is. We're making this thing up day by day. And I get it if you don't have that, but sometimes through your own personal development and professional development, you can learn that through coaching, through therapy, going to conferences, those kind of things is where you're going to a retreat. You're going to be able to learn how to set up what's called a preferred future. And every relationship have their own unique and respective future that should be designed for them, right? It may not look like anybody else's, but as long as both of you are okay with what you're designing and mutually agreeing upon, then that's what is important. And so what we're going to do today in day number 4 is kind of help you design what that should look like and give you some ideas. And hopefully this might help you to have a better way of designing your desired future. Okay. Now, again, adjusting for deeper connection is what we're talking about today. Now, as we are on this road, we're following this roadmap, happier marriage roadmap. We've come a long way, right? You're traveling with me. We got in that vehicle in day number 1. We made it through day number 2. We made it through day number 3. And now we are in day number 4. And we're on the home stretch. We're almost there. But today is so important because we are going to put that preferred future, that we're going to build on in day number 5 so we can sustain what it is we want and get to the point of a happier marriage, right? That's where we're heading. Now, one of the first things I want to share with you as we are adjust for deeper connection is what is happening is you're seeking to connect with your spouse, right? All we've done so far, if especially in day number 3, is setting the stage to connect with your spouse. Because what has happened, and you can attest to this, what has happened in your relationship so far is there have been a disconnect, right? You have felt disconnected from your spouse. It doesn't feel the same. There's a disconnection happening. And what you're trying to do here is trying to figure a way, how do you reconnect, right? How do you connect with your spouse? Now, in adjusting for this to happen, we have to behave differently than we behave in day number 2, where we talk about disruptive interactions, right? We talk about disruptive interactions. Well, in day number 4, it's almost the flip side of day number 2. The things you did in day number 2 created more and more disconnection, correct? Right? We find ourselves drifting apart. We find ourselves moving away from each other. And through healing in day number 3, we begin to do a reset. Now, what we're doing now is reconnecting. We're finding a way to connect. Now, why it's so important here is that connection may have some elements of what happened in day number 2, but here's what the difference is. You want to give your spouse, your husband, your wife, the benefit of the doubt. You want to begin to build into your psyche, into your way of looking, your lens. How could you interpret what they're doing as an attempt on their part to connect? Because sometimes when they're trying to connect, we misinterpret it as controlling. We misinterpret it as seeking a conflict, right? But what may be happening is a desperation to connect. Now, they may not be going about it the right way, and so it's not working. So what we're saying here is we want to adjust the way we go about doing it. We want to adjust the way we navigate, we go through it, so that we can now see what might be the good intention of our spouse. Because sometimes our spouse have a good intention and they're truly from a good place wanting to connect with you and be intimate, but somehow they are so frustrated that it comes across as if they are arguing, they're fighting. And I get it, because that's not a good delivery. That's a delivery from a place of hurt. And so it comes across not as wanting to connect, but wanting to fight and still continue the disconnect loop, or the disconnection narrative, right? The script. But what happened is we need to adjust our lens to say, maybe what my husband or my wife is doing or saying, I'm truly reacting to. And we talked about that in the past, about instead of reacting, we need to be responding. So adjusting requires responding, not reacting. So we need to take a step back and look at what it is we may have missed in our spouse's attempt to connect. So connection may look, like I said, it may look a little bit like what you experience in the disruptive interaction. But because when you're so heated and you're so in that moment, you cannot see possibly what else might be there. What else might be happening in this person's life, right? We don't take time for that anymore. We're so quick to rush to judgment. And I get, our human nature are made up. All of us are guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. I have done that numerous times. My brain just quickly goes to the judgment and conclusion without truly looking at everything that may be possibly going on in my family's, my wife's, or my children's life, right? So we all are guilty of that. What we're trying to do here is slow it down. We're trying to slow things down so that we can have a better outcome. if we're going to have a design, a future that's better than what we had, we've got to then seek to connect. And not only us seeking to connect, but our spouse need to try to interpret the behavior as an attempt to connect and not to control and not to create a conflict, right? Now, one of those ways we try to connect is through what I mentioned, love currency, is trying to transact that connection that we're seeking to do, because sometimes it's what is how we go about doing it, right? So as important is as what we do is, it's also very important as how we do what we do, right? Because sometimes people may say it's not what you do, it's how you do what you do. I don't buy that. I buy both, right? It's not an either or. I say it is what you do and it is how you do what you do. They both go hand in hand. It's hand in gloves. You cannot separate that. It's very important, right? And so there's a question here, and I'm gonna go to that question here. Thank you for posting that question. As the questions come in, just post them. As you have a thought or a question, post them. I'll go back to them and at the end. So thank you for posting. Keep on posting those questions as they come to mind. Don't let them slip your mind. Post them there, right? So what happened is that what we do and how we do it is important, but sometimes we're using the wrong currency. Imagine you go to a country that do not accept the currency of your native country. And so you get there and you're trying to transact business. The first thing you want to do is exchange your currency for that country's currency so you can transact business in that currency. Why? That's the currency that they use to buy and sell in their country. So you're going to find a way to get the exchange rate and get their currency. It's similar in our relationships, right? We have a currency, each of us have a currency that we need to take our currency, right? The way we're transacting our relationship, and we need to exchange that for the currency of our spouse. Because most times the currency our spouse use is not the same currency that we use. And I'm going to explain that in a few minutes more about that, right? Sometimes the currency that, most times, not sometimes, most times the currency of your spouse is not the currency that you use. But here's what happens sometimes. What we do and how we do it is that we're forcing our currency on our spouse, right? And sometimes it may not be necessarily forcing, but we're using our currency and our spouse is saying, in my country, so to speak, in my world, this is not the currency I use. But this is what happens where the fight and the conflict comes in, because the attempt is to use a currency that is not going to get you the return that you're hoping for, right? So that's why we need to adjust and then use the love currency of our spouse. Now, here are then what it is you're going to be doing. This currency transaction is your daily deposit into the connection bank of your spouse, right? So every time you use a currency of his currency or her currency, not yours, his or her currency, sometimes, and a very, very, I've yet to see, I think there may be exceptions. There is exceptions to everything, but I've yet to see a couple using the same currency to transact how they do business, so to speak, relationally. We have heard the phrase many times, opposite attract. And we say, oh, that's a cliche. No, there's a truth to that. There's a truth to that. Because what happened is we want to find somebody who is so different from us, because there's something about what they have that we need, what we have that they need. And so both come together to kind of complete that whole circle, and a whole different presentation. But I just want to make that observation. So the currency that you're going to deposit is the love currency into the bank account, the connection bank of your spouse, right? So I want you to follow this very carefully, because you cannot deposit in his or her bank account a currency that his or her bank does not use. We need to make certain that the currency we're using, and I want to emphasize this so well, because I think you're going to see why it's so important as we go through, right? That why this is this currency transaction is so key to the success of our relationship and how we adjust. Because here's what happened. Here are some of the currency that is, it's also called love languages, but I want to use the word currency because I want to see it as a deposit you're making, right? It's a deposit you're making in the relationship account, but in the bank account of your spouse, you're building up enough monetary, so to speak, right? Our relationship currency, so that if a withdrawal is necessary because something that may have happened, a mishap or a misinterpretation or misunderstanding, the bank account is not in overdraft where it now becomes very, very anxious because we're in the red. But if you put enough deposits in the bank account of your spouse and the relationship, when those moments occur, a withdrawal occur, it won't freak out as it would if the account was in the red. And many relationships, couples are operating in the red, right? Now, so what happened, I have 5 deposit currencies, right? In another word, it's called love languages, right? But I'm going to call it the currency. These are the deposits you want to make. And every one of us have a primary currency that we recognize easily. When we see it, we know it, right? When we hear it, we know it. When we feel it, we know it, because it's a currency that is native to us. It's what we use in our country, our world, our lives, right? So this is in no particular order. But for example, my currency is words of affirmation. I call it the word deposit. So if my wife wants a deposit in my bank account, what she has to do is trade in her currency for mine and then make the deposit, right? Now, it takes some work because it means going to the bank, so to speak. So follow the analogy here. Going to the bank, so to speak, taking the time to do the exchange, and then come and deposit in my bank account. That takes time. It takes effort. It takes work. And sometimes a spouse do not want to go through that and they act lazily. They want to give you the currency and force on you their currency. And is it any wonder you have a clash? Is it any wonder it does not compute in the bank account of your spouse? They don't hear it. And they constantly ask you a question about their bank account. Hey, you haven't made a deposit yet today. And they may ask it in different ways. So words, for me, is a word deposit. When my wife, for example, offer me a word deposit or a word of affirmation, is affirming something that I have done, and she notices that, right? So hearing that from her is how she'll make a deposit in my bank account. So the more she does that, the more my bank account gets filled. And here's the wonderful piece. The more my bank account gets filled, and this may sound like a tit for tat, but it's not. It's how it works. The more I have to then invest in her bank account because she's invested in mine, and we constantly invested in each other's. And so I built up each account. And the more I build her up hers and she builds mine up, the more the relationship experience a healthy bank account, right? And it can sustain a whole lot more if something happens accidentally, right? Not purposely, not pre-planned, but accidentally, it can handle that. Another one is gift deposits, right? Some people, their currency is gift. And so what happened is they're looking, when they get a gift, it lights up their world. They say, hey, you thought about me, and that's the gift deposit they want. And when they get a gift, now it may not be, it doesn't mean that when they get something else, they're not appreciative, but the currency that really matters for them, their primary currency, is the gift, right? And then you can follow this. The next one, touch, is really physical touch, hugs, a touch on the shoulder here and there. That's how they experience that. It could be service or acts of service. And sometimes someone mentioned yesterday how when they're in a conflict with their spouse, they said that when that husband, in this case, mentioned yesterday in day number 3, when the husband goes to wash the dishes or help around the house, they become very happy because they interpret that as that husband attending to their bank account. They're transacting the business and having the love currency of act of service making that deposit, that person knows it when they see it, they know it when they hear it, they know it when they feel it. And that's why it was made, observed, and posted, yes, in day 3, that's how they understand how it kind of helped them to know that the person has truly meant what they say when they truly ask for forgiveness and apologize and so on. And that was the comment that was made that I said I would follow up on today. Time deposit is quality time. Some people just want to spend time with them, right? And here's a problem though. Here's what, not say problem, but here's a challenge. Whatever we want for ourselves is what we tend to give. That's again, going back to I mentioned our currency. We want to spend our currency in somebody else's country, right? Our spouse's country. And they're simply saying that their country where they're living their world, it doesn't accept that currency, right? And so what happened is most times we end up, and so we said, yeah, but I'm giving you what you need. But I appreciate those things, but it's not computing as it should. Why? Because a spouse or one spouse is almost always given what they want, what their currency is. Why? It's easier. It doesn't take much work. You don't have to go to the bank. You don't have to get the exchange. You really don't have to do any of those things. So it's easier it's almost like a lazy kind of approach. I'm not saying the person is lazy, but it's a lazy kind of approach because it takes work to give the other person what they want. Again, for example, my wife's, her love currency is affection, right? Physical touch. And so for me, it's easier to give her word deposit because that's what I want. Now, she appreciates that, but at the same time, she's simply saying she still asks for what her transaction needs, her bank account needs. And for me, it takes work. And so it takes me a little while to get there. And sometimes she has to encourage me in different ways so I can actually go to her bank account with the right transaction, the right currency. And that takes some work. And this is where sometimes we have to adjust. And to adjust means I have to be intentional and decide that I'm going to do the work of getting my my spouse's currency, get the exchange done, and then give them what they want. Sometimes it feels kind of out of your comfort zone because it's not natural for you. It feels as if almost like it's not genuine. You're doing something, but that's how it should feel. If it does not feel that way, then you're giving your spouse what it is you want for yourself, right? If it feels easy and is not a challenge for you, then the chance is you're giving your spouse your currency, and you wonder why it's not computing, why it is that they seem to be so aloof and like, wait a minute, you're saying I did all these things. Look at what I did. Look at what I said. And you are still complaining because the transaction of that person's country, relationship, so to speak, haven't been done. And their bank account is still empty. It's still running in the red. And that's why I think it's so important to make sure we know the currency of our spouse and then transact the business in their currency. And that's one of the assignments today at the end of our presentation is to begin to learn the currency of your spouse and transact the business accordingly. And I mentioned more about that towards the end of our presentation. Now, facts over feelings. This is where some people get it mixed up because they're trying to explain facts, but they're using feelings to explain that. Okay. So what happened is, let me just share this with you here. Facts is just the facts. What did you see or what did you hear? When you are describing the facts, it's just what you see or what you heard. It's not what you feel, right? It's not what you taste, because that is subjective. It's subjective what you feel and taste or even smell using the 5 senses here. But what you saw and what you heard is objective, is what you saw. I saw a red car. That's a fact, right? I heard the sound of a airplane as it flew overhead. That is a fact, right? So sometimes what happens is when we're in a relationship, in our relationships, we are describing our feelings as fact or as opinion, and we wonder why our spouse defend themselves or want to debate you because you've created a debatable moment, right? For example, if I said, I feel like you're not listening to me, that is not a feeling. That is an opinion. You're sharing your opinion or your thought, which means you open the door for a debate because your spouse can now say, but I'm listening to you. I'm hearing you. Now, who's right? See, yours is a judgment call, and so is his or hers, right? So what happened is people describe, I can say then, as I'm talking to you, you are on your phone. You're on your phone, which indicates to me that you may not be fully listening to me, right? That is a fact. I'm speaking, he or she's on their phone. That's a fact. So what I see and what I hear, I've got to is facts over feelings, right? Just the facts when you're sharing something that you want your spouse to hear from you directly. Now, I think I may have, let's see here. Okay. That slide that I just shared with you I gotta go back to that. But when you're sharing it's called I statements. When you're sharing a fact, is just a fact, as I mentioned just now. A feeling is said in 3 or 4 words, right? If you have to go beyond 3 or 4 words, is no longer a feeling. That's a rule of thumb idea here. Anything beyond 3 or 4 words is a opinion or a thought you're sharing, right? So what happened is if I feel sad, that's a feeling. I feel hurt, that's a feeling. I feel disappointed, that's a feeling. I feel very sad, that's a feeling. I feel like you are not listening to me, that's not a feeling, right? And so many times, what happened in a relationship, couples are fighting over these things because they have not taken the time to truly express my feeling. I'm experiencing, expressing an opinion. Now, I know that this may seem like semantics, but I find these are fighting moments because what happened is you're opening up what it is. You're opening up yourself for a debate, right? And there is a way that I teach, and of course, we won't have enough time to go through that. We won't even go through that tonight. I keep on saying tonight. I want to make sure it's not night or day. It's just say as we do this presentation. So as we go through, I won't have enough time, and basically that's a whole different teaching about how then to formulate a fact statement versus a feeling statement. I give you a rule of thumb to kind of give you an idea of how different it should sound, how different it should look. And so when you're able to talk about facts and over feelings and differentiate both, then it's what it sounds like this. When I saw or when I heard, that is a fact you're describing. I felt is a feeling statement you're making. And this is where it's sacred. It's sacred because only you know how you'll feel. No one should ever say to you, you should not feel that way. People will try or say, you are so, you're so emotional, and I don't want to get too much into this, but I want to say sometimes when someone constantly uses that, it probably is a controller type or a verbal abuser type, right? They tend to use that. Now, I'm not saying it's always the case, but most times when you hear it over and over and over again, there's some controlling element to it or abusive element to that. And it's a power control, a power way of saying, you should not have a right to your feelings. And they keep on telling you over and over again and driving that home. And you wonder, well, I feel that. When I say it's a sacred thing, because it's sacred to you. You feel it, you know it, and only you who do, right? Who do that. So just the facts is what you want to do. And facts over feeling is so important. And I hope that makes sense. And someone says it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Fact over feelings. Yes, it's really a very important subject matter that most times people, they just don't, we miss it. And, it's not a pointing finger here. I know that it took me a while to truly learn this and be able to separate both. And after being working with so many people and in my own professional development, I was able to distinguish the difference. And once I did, I know how to deliver that. And I teach people how to deliver a fact statement over a feeling statement, right? Now, so that's the difference between facts and feeling. Now, the sacred exchange is what I talk about. The sacred exchange is where you're using I statements, right? So, I am sad is sacred to me. I know how I feel. I know what it's like when I'm hurt. I know when it's like I'm sad. I don't want somebody to take lead in speaking for me. I've seen couples and heard couples who've said, "Oh, he should know how I feel. Oh, she should know how I feel." Really? Are you saying that you're so shallow and your feeling is so out there that he knows you that way? I can tell you that I can say after 37 years of marriage, I'm still trying my best not to in any way project that like I know how my wife feels, because every feeling is unique. So if I don't request clarity, it's one way to find out what the person's feeling, but most importantly, it's on you who's feeling a certain way to convey that. It's sacred to you. God has given you a sacredness of how to feel when you're experiencing pain or joy, excitement. That's sacred. And only you know what it feels like. And that's privileged information. So avoid saying to your spouse, "You should know how I feel." No, don't put that on them, because you're putting them in a place that they're going to guess, or they're going to try to attempt to say, "I know," and they could be wrong. And if they're wrong, God helps them. Because how dare you not know how I feel? How dare you don't not know what I'm going through? They should not know. They don't put that sacred thing called feelings in somebody else's hand, because they could hurt you that way. They could say things around that is not what you want to hear, and then mess things up. So that's why I call it the sacred statements. I feel, I am sad, I am excited, right? I am happy. We are, not we, because we can't speak for we, is I, right? It's I. So if you're in a situation, I tell couples many times they come in to see me, I said, as I hear you speak, I want to ask you to do me a favor. Speak for yourself. Because you take on like, "We are so happy." Well, it may not be true. It may not be true. I remember I had a couple one time where that was what the husband, who happened to be in this case. Now, sometimes wives do it as well, but mainly I say husbands speaking for their wives, and they will make it up quickly. "We're happy. We are. And I said, hold up, hold up, hold up. You know, you don't know right now what your wife might be experiencing as we're talking. So I want you to use personal, what is it you are experiencing? And I'll ask her, or vice versa, ask him, what is he feeling? Because I don't necessarily want to trust that you're not speaking up quickly so that your spouse feel coward or intimidated and don't say anything because you've now spoken for the relationship. No, it's sacred, and you need to speak for yourself and advocate for yourself. And so if someone said, "Oh, I know how you feel," just simply say, "I'm sorry. I appreciate the fact that you are, you say that, but truly you don't know how I feel right now. You really don't know how I feel, but I want to let you know how I feel. Can I share with you how I truly feel?" Right? That is adjustment. You're adjusting, and hopefully your spouse is also adjusting as well as we do that, right? Now, adjusting for deeper connection. Here's what I want us to kind of, as we kind of go in for the landing here, and take some questions after. Here is what is so key. If you hear nothing about what I've just said, hear this part. Adjusting for deeper connection is going to take time. It's not going to happen on the first time through. This is where you have to be patient and ask God to help you, because what happened is sometimes you're looking for a quick fix, right? This is not for a quick fix. It's going to allow you to build a strong foundation. You don't want to have a quick fix anyway, because quick fixes tend to last just for a short time and they go away. You want this to be a new framework. You want this to be your design in your future. You don't design a house and put the foundation in right away and start building. No, you want the foundation to be solid if you're thinking long term. So be okay with what I call take one, take two, take three. So the first time through, you may not get it right, but it's okay. You can do a take two, as long as both of you are working towards the same goal. I remember my wife and I had gone in a cruise, and we were taking they had a salsa dancing lesson on the cruise, and I've never danced salsa before, so the guy was making it look so simple and so easy. As I look on, I'm thinking, oh, I can do that. And I get out there, and I'm telling you, I felt like I had two left foot, or two right foot, right? Two right feet, right? Yeah, plural, two right feet, two left feet. And it was so funny, because what I saw and thought I could achieve right away, I realized it took technique, it took patience, right? It took some skills that I never had. I had to develop those. And eventually I began to caught onto it. But here's the thing, we were able to get the moves right there on the dance floor in the salsa with the guy training us. But here's what happened. You ask me to do it now, I'm not going to be able to do it. Why? We have not practiced. We have not practiced. Now, if we had practiced, I can guarantee we would have been a whole lot better and get it down. So wherever we go, we could do the salsa thing. But what happened is that we did take one. As we stepped on each other's toes, we spun around, we kind of tripped each other up. But as we practiced take one, take two, take three, we finally got the moves right. And at the end of the training, we felt very comfortable with our dance step and our salsa. But that's all. We left it there, and we did not practice because we never had the opportunity. And that's an excuse we could find. If I really wanted to, and we really wanted to, we could. And I take responsibility. My wife has many times said, let's go and do some salsa and practice. And I'm thinking, I just don't, it's not my cup of tea. But here's what happened. I could really work at it and become better. And it's the same here. I can make the adjustment on the dance floor. You have to make the adjustment. This is your dance floor. This is your salsa moment. If you've not danced salsa, if you've danced salsa, pick another dance routine that you have never danced. And this is your moment on the dance floor. You're now on the dance floor with your spouse. You're making adjustments in this new dance, right? These dance steps. And you're going to step on each other's toes. You're not going to get it right away, but be patient and be okay with that. Someone said they love currency. Thank you for that. Yes, I appreciate that. You're going to step on each other's toes and be okay. It's adjustment, right? You're making this adjustment as you go. And so and your spouse know this is a designing your future moment. These are the things you're doing. And it's going to take, again, and I keep on repeating this because it's important, take one, take two, but you're growing together, you're in it together, and you are being patient with each other, right? This is the flip side of day number 2, if you're thinking about it, right? This is more constructive interaction, whereas in day number 2, you had disruptive interactions, right? So we're moving from disruptive, we're moving into constructive, we're moving into productive. And so some parts of it may look like day number 2 where it's disruptive, but you're going to interpret it different. You're going to adjust around it. So I'm simply saying, take a deep breath, exhale, and just kind of dig in for the journey. It's a new journey. It's a new rhythm you're trying to form in your relationship. And when you're patient enough and you take one, take two, take three, and do the adjustment, then you are now moving yourself down from the number you chose on day number 1. Remember that number? It's going to take you to the next number. These things I just described, the love currency, right? The facts over feelings, the sacred statements, right? Those are the things that are going to help you to move your relationship from where it's at to where you want to go. It takes patience, but you'll get there because you're in for the long haul. Now, I mentioned to you earlier about the love currency and why I think this is so important, because this fits the model of empathic communication. Because empathic requires you to have a better understanding and feeling of the other person. You need to know what currency they transact the business in their world, their lives. So I want you to find out the love currency of your spouse and begin to transact business using that currency. I gave you the 5 currency, the 5 most used currencies, right? I gave that to you. I hope you wrote that down someplace. And I want you to see, maybe you may have to ask your spouse and ask him or her, when I communicate to you my care, my love for you, right? What is it that I do that makes you feel like I'm truly communicating in a way that you get it and you feel that, you hear that, you know that? And maybe you may want to just explain those 5 currency and say, which of these 5 would you be more you? And you could have a game and you could say, hey, which of these 5 do you think is my currency? Right? Now, currencies could change because you could move out of your own relationship world to another world sometime down the road, but it's rarely that happens. It could have a real close currency, because some countries have 2 currencies sometimes, right? They can transact business in their currency and in another currency. Like if I go to Jamaica, where I'm from, we have the Jamaican dollar, and we also transact in the US dollars, right? So you have 2 currencies there, but predominantly in Jamaica is a Jamaican dollar. That's what most business is done in. So there's a predominant currency. So find out what your spouse's love currency is and see if he or she can guess yours. But then you can also tell them what your currency is. And I want you then to begin to pick one day or one thing that you're going to do that would speak that language or transact a business with your spouse in that currency, right? And it's between you and him and you and her. And I won't ask you to do anything with that, but just to find that out and begin to transact. This is your moment of adjustment. This is where it begins for you. And I chose this one because I find this may be the easiest way to begin this adjustment process. Right now, the homework assignment. This is what I want for you to journal and write down. List the ways in which you are going to use your spouse's love currency to make regular deposits in his or her bank account. So once you have figured out what the currency is of your spouse, I would like for you to just come up with a list of different ways you could use that currency to transact the business of their world, in their world, right? So for me, for example, my wife would, if I cut the grass, because I do the outside work most of the time, and she comes home and say, honey, the yard looks so good, so neat. That's a love currency. She deposited in my bank account. When I do speaking engagement and she happens to be there and she gave me a feedback and how, what she felt, she made a deposit because she affirmed me with words of affirmation. She may say, you were so enthusiastic. You really connected with the people. Whatever she says, that's nice, right? That's nice. That's good. It's not a time for the negatives. For the good parts, she made a deposit in my bank account. If I, created something around the house, whatever it is, and she speak to that, that's the currency that I hear. If I, on the other hand, do any physical touch, right? So if I just came up to her and hug her without she asking for it, which she would say she probably had to ask most times, and she would be right. Because that's not my, I'm a bit lazy sometimes. I need to go to the bank and transact exchange the currency sometimes. And I don't do that well myself. I'm still learning and I'm still in the process. The good part is that she does not beat me over the head because I may have failed day one or day two, whatever case might be, or 30 plus years later. But the point is that I can make a deposit in her bank account. The more deposit we make, or the more ways we can write down, the easier it is for us to pick one thing, and also to notice when we are making a transaction and what our spouse's response to that is, right? That is what I want you to do. And there you have it, my friends. I hope this episode encouraged you and gave you some hope. This podcast is designed with that in mind, and each week we seek to find one more way to get you closer to your heart's desire when it comes to your marriage. Make sure you give this show a rating and a review by clicking the appropriate link that will take you there on the platform you're listening to. Also, subscribe to the show so you'll be updated on all the new releases. Remember, if you're interested in the full course, which consists of 5 videos, you can access that at kingsleygrant.com/HMS course. One word, kingsleygrant.com/HMS course. And there you'll find the full course. Have access to that. The link will be in the show notes as well. You just click on that and go straight there. And I'm inviting you to also make sure that you follow me on social media at Kingsley Grant and all the platforms. Do those things today, okay? Don't delay. It will only take you less than 2 minutes to do the review and rating, but also to click that link in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May you and your spouse begin the journey to a happier marriage. And may that blessing be on you both now and forever. Amen. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Happier Marriage Podcast. See you then, and God bless.